This was supposed to be the trip that saved our marriage. Instead, I opened the wrong door and watched everything fall apart in an instant. I honestly thought this trip would be the reset button Emily and I needed. Just the two of us, away from everything. No work, no stress, no routines. But all it took was a single knock on a cabin door to unravel everything I believed was true. That moment cracked open secrets I never imagined she was keeping from me, and it was only the start. My name's Ryan. I'm 35 years old and have been married to my wife, Emily, for 7 years now. We've weathered our share of ups and downs like most couples do, but if you had asked me just a few weeks ago, I would have told you with confidence that we were in a good place. Not perfect, sure, but solid. Genuinely solid. Emily's one of those people who can walk into a room and instantly lift the whole mood. She's got this mix of intelligence and warmth that draws people in. When she talks to you, you feel like you matter. I guess that's part of what made me blind to what was coming. I never thought I had a reason to question us. Lately, though, we'd both been running on fumes. I'd been putting in long hours trying to secure a promotion, and Emily was juggling back-to-back marketing projects with crazy deadlines. We were living parallel lives under the same roof, barely crossing paths except to sleep or eat. So, when the idea of a vacation came up, it felt like a lifeline. We tossed around a few ideas but finally settled on something that sounded perfect. A week-long ferry cruise. Just the two of us drifting between scenic ports, no clocks, no meetings, no responsibilities. I pictured us sipping coffee on the deck in the mornings, getting lost in books during the afternoons, and having long, quiet dinners under the stars. We'd done quick weekend trips before, but this felt different. It felt like a chance to actually slow down, to reconnect. The more we talked about it, the more excited I got. Emily seemed thrilled too, actually even more than I expected. She was almost giddy. She kept saying how much she needed a break, how refreshing it would be to unplug for a whole week. She was the one who insisted we book it right away. From that moment on, she took the reins. She mapped out the cruise schedule, researched every stop, checked out local spots to eat, even planned what she'd wear each day. I remember thinking it was kind of sweet. Emily's always been the planner in our relationship, but there was a different kind of energy to her this time. Felt urgent, like she was counting down the days. But I didn't overthink it. I chalked it up to excitement. We both needed this trip, and I was genuinely looking forward to it. I had no clue that what awaited me on that cruise would turn my whole world inside out. A few days after we finalized the booking, Emily came home from work with this huge smile on her face. I was lounging on the couch, half watching TV, half scrolling through my phone when she dropped down next to me, practically glowing. "I've got a little twist for our vacation," she said, her eyes lighting up. "You remember my coworker Jessica?" I nodded. Jessica was younger, energetic, the kind of person who laughs a lot and brings that energy into every room. I'd met her a couple of times at Emily's work parties. Seemed nice enough. "Yeah, sure. What about her?" "Well," Emily went on, "I mentioned our cruise during lunch today and Jessica got so excited. She and her boyfriend Tyler have been looking to get away too. She asked if they could come along. I told her I'd check with you first, but I think it could be fun. They're still in that early, can't keep their hands off each other phase and have been dying for a vacation." I'll be honest, my first reaction was a little hesitation. I'd imagined this as a romantic escape, something just for Emily and me. But the way she pitched it and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about it, I didn't want to let her down. And the more I considered it, the more it didn't sound so bad. Jessica and Tyler were fun, lively, and maybe having them around would bring a new kind of energy. Something spontaneous. We'd still have time for ourselves, right? "Sure," I said with a smile. "Could be fun. Might even learn a thing or two from the young lovebirds." Her face lit up even more as she leaned in and hugged me. "You're the best. I was hoping you'd say yes." Seeing her happy made it worth it. I told myself it would be good for us, good for me, to just relax, laugh, and maybe recapture some of that carefree spark. I had no idea how wrong I was. When the day of the trip finally rolled around, I was practically buzzing with anticipation. We'd double-checked everything, bags packed, itinerary confirmed, even our tickets printed out and tucked neatly into Emily's bag like she always did. As we pulled into the ferry terminal, I could see it in her face. She was glowing. There was this lightness about her that I hadn't seen in a while, and it matched the excitement building inside me. This vacation felt like the start of something good. We met up with Jessica and Tyler not long after we arrived. They were just as I remembered, full of energy, chatting a mile a minute and already tossing around ideas for what they wanted to do during the week. Jessica especially was bubbling with excitement, rattling off plans like snorkeling, karaoke, and some kind of themed dinner night. To be honest, it felt nice. I hadn't realized how much I missed being around people like that, carefree, energetic, just alive. Tyler was quick with the jokes, the kind of guy who could make a stranger laugh within 5 minutes, and Jessica brought a kind of upbeat energy that made the air feel lighter. I found myself thinking that maybe having them around would be more fun than I'd expected. Once we got settled into our cabins, they were cozy with just enough space to feel comfortable. We all agreed to meet up for dinner. The restaurant we chose was one of the nicer ones on the ship, with these huge windows that looked right out over the ocean. The timing was perfect. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, throwing streaks of gold and orange across the water. It was breathtaking. We grabbed a table near the window and right away the vibe was great. Emily and Jessica were already deep into conversation, whispering and laughing over some story I couldn't hear. Tyler and I flipped through the menus, exchanging comments about what looked good, and before long we had a couple of bottles of wine on the table and the conversation started to flow easily. I liked Tyler. He was one of those laid-back guys who could blend into any group. Before I knew it, we were trading stories and cracking jokes like we'd known each other for years. Jessica kept teasing him about the corny lines he used when they first met, and Emily was all smiles, laughing along like we were in the middle of a comedy show. For a moment, I leaned back in my seat, just soaking it in, Emily glowing with laughter, the sea in the background, the buzz of good company all around. I hadn't felt this at peace in a long time. After dinner, Jessica lit up again with another idea. "There's live music at the bar tonight," she said, practically bouncing in her seat. "We have to check it out." I looked at Emily, waiting to see if she was up for it, and she nodded with a wide grin. "Absolutely. We haven't danced in forever." So we made our way to one of the ship's lounges, where a small band was already playing to a lively crowd. The place was packed, the music upbeat, and we squeezed into a spot near the dance floor. Jessica and Tyler were already swaying to the rhythm, completely in their element. Emily reached for my hand and pulled me in closer. We danced, we laughed, and for a little while, it felt like we'd stumbled into something magical. Just us, the music, and the ocean rolling gently beneath our feet. By the time we left the dance floor, the night had shifted to something slower, more relaxed. We decided to stop by one of the quieter bars before calling it a night. The space was dimly lit, almost like a speakeasy, with soft jazz humming in the background and a few people scattered at the tables and booths. We slid into a booth near the back and I ordered a round for everyone. Tyler started telling this hilarious story about getting lost on a road trip in college, something about no cell service, a map from 1999, and a very angry raccoon. I was laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes. It felt good, really good, to let go like that. I'd forgotten how much I missed just being present, not thinking about work or bills or responsibilities, just living in the moment. Eventually, the drinks and the day caught up with me. I glanced at my watch, well past midnight. The gentle sway of the ferry was starting to lull me into sleep. I stretched my arms and let out a yawn. "All right," I said, turning to Emily, "I think I'm going to call it a night. It's been a great first day, but I'm running on fumes." Emily was sitting shoulder to shoulder with Jessica, the two of them laughing quietly over something I wasn't in on. When I mentioned heading back, she looked over and gave me a sweet smile. "You go ahead, babe. I think I'm going to hang back a little longer with Jess and Tyler. We're just having fun and I'm not tired yet." Her response caught me off guard, not in a bad way, just unexpectedly. I hesitated for a second. "You sure? It's getting pretty late," I said, trying to keep it light, not wanting to seem clingy. "Long day." She nodded quickly, her smile still there, though maybe a little more measured now. "I'm sure. I don't get to do this kind of thing often, you know? I'll be back soon." Tyler raised his glass toward me. "We've got her, man." "Don't worry," he said with an easy grin. I smiled back, gave Emily a quick kiss on the cheek and told them to enjoy the rest of the night. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just figured she wanted to unwind a bit more. I had no idea what staying behind that night would set in motion. Jessica chimed in, "We're just gonna hang out a little longer, maybe shoot a quick game of pool. We'll head back soon, I promise." I paused for a beat. A part of me wanted to say, "Let's just go together," but I didn't want to come off as clingy or overbearing. It was our vacation after all, and we weren't joined at the hip. Emily was right. Nights like this didn't come around often. So I gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and nodded. "All right. Don't stay out too late." She smiled up at me, all casual and reassuring. "I won't. Promise." As I turned and made my way out of the bar, I looked back one last time. Emily had already turned her attention back to Jessica. Her face lit up in a way that was almost childlike, genuinely happy and carefree. It warmed me, honestly. Seeing her like that made me feel like this trip was already doing what I'd hoped, recharging us, reminding us what it felt like to just be happy. But as I wandered down the quiet hall toward our cabin, a tiny flicker of doubt slid into my thoughts. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just tired, that I was reading into things too much. Emily had always been outgoing, loved being around people, being part of the fun. Staying out late for once? That wasn't out of character. Still, the thought lingered. When I got back to our cabin, it was dark and still. I slipped out of my shoes, changed into a t-shirt and shorts, and crawled into bed. The hum of the ship's engines was oddly soothing, and for a few minutes I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and footsteps fading into the night. I kept telling myself everything was fine. She'd be back soon. No need to overthink it. Eventually, sleep found me, but not before I whispered a quiet hope into the darkness, that tomorrow would be as beautiful as today had been. That this little spark we'd found wouldn't fizzle out too soon. But sometime later, maybe an hour or so, I was pulled out of sleep by a soft knock at the cabin door. At first I thought I was dreaming, but it came again. Gentle but persistent. I glanced at the clock. A little after 1 a.m. I figured Emily had forgotten her key and was finally back. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Jessica. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was something a little uncertain in her expression. "Hey Ryan. Sorry to bug you so late," she said in a low voice. "Do you happen to have an extra phone charger?" I totally spaced and forgot mine, and my battery's pretty much dead. Still half asleep, I nodded. "Yeah, hang on," I mumbled, turning to grab it off the desk. And then I paused. "Wait," I said, slowly turning back toward her. "Where's Emily?" Jessica's smile faltered for just a second, and she blinked like she hadn't expected the question. "She's not back yet?" she asked, a little confused now. "I thought she came here already." "She left the bar before I did." That made my stomach tighten. "No, she's not here," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I figured she left with you." Now Jessica looked genuinely thrown. "She told me she was heading back," she said, frowning. "Maybe she stopped somewhere on the way?" "But I thought for sure she'd be here." A chill crept up the back of my neck. I didn't want to overreact, but something wasn't sitting right. The ship wasn't massive, but it was late, and the idea of her wandering around alone didn't feel great. I handed Jessica the charger. "Let's check the bar," I said, already stepping into the hallway. Maybe she forgot something or ran into someone she knew. The corridors were nearly silent now, our footsteps echoing as we moved quickly toward the lounge. Most folks had turned in, and the ship had that eerie late-night hush to it. When we reached the bar, it was dim and almost empty. A couple of lingering guests were nursing their drinks or whispering quietly, but there was no sign of Emily. Jessica looked around, clearly getting concerned now. "She was right behind me," she muttered. "I swear she said she was heading straight to the cabin." I didn't respond. My chest was tightening. I turned without a word and made my way toward the outer deck. Maybe she needed some air. Maybe she just wanted a quiet moment alone. As soon as I pushed open the heavy door, a gust of cool night wind hit my face. The deck was mostly empty, lit only by a few soft lights. And then I saw her. Emily was standing near the railing, alone, her back turned to us, staring out at the endless black of the ocean. Something about the way she stood, so still, so distant, sent a jolt through me. "Emily," I called out, feeling this wave of relief wash over me the second I saw her. She turned, looking a little startled, like she hadn't expected anyone to find her out there. "Oh hey," she said, her voice light and breezy, like nothing was out of the ordinary. She even smiled, that familiar, easy smile of hers. "What are you doing up? I thought you'd be out cold by now." I glanced at Jessica, then back at Emily. "We were looking for you," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Jessica said you left the bar, but you never made it back to the cabin. I was starting to wonder where you'd gone." Emily's smile didn't falter, but I caught it, that tiny flicker in her eyes, the way they shifted away just for a second before meeting mine again. "Oh, I just ended up out here," she said, her tone casual. "It's so quiet and peaceful. I guess I lost track of time." I wanted to take her at her word. I really did. It wasn't the craziest explanation. Maybe she just needed a breather, some alone time. But there was something about how she said it. Something that didn't sit right, no matter how much I tried to reason it away. Before I could say anything else, Jessica jumped in. "You had us a little worried there," she said with a soft laugh, though I could hear the edge in her voice too. "Come on, it's freezing. Let's head back before we turn into popsicles." Emily nodded, and the three of us started walking back toward our cabins. I kept telling myself it was all a misunderstanding, that maybe I was just overthinking everything. But as we walked, I caught a faint scent clinging to Emily's clothes, something subtle, masculine. Cologne. Not mine. Not familiar. I tried to ignore it, chalked it up to maybe Tyler brushing against her earlier, or maybe it was just something in the air. But the seed had been planted, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it was growing. Back at the cabin, we said goodnight, and I slid into bed beside her, the silence between us more noticeable than usual. She seemed calm, content. I pretended to be the same. But my mind wouldn't stop turning. That scent. The way she was out there, alone. Her brushing me off so easily earlier. I told myself I was imagining things. That we were just tired. That I was being overly sensitive. But even as I fell asleep, I couldn't shake that feeling deep down, that something wasn't right. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Maybe it was the drinks, maybe just the weight of all the swirling thoughts from the night before. Whatever it was, I felt drained. My head was foggy, my body sluggish. I told Emily I wasn't feeling great and that I was going to skip breakfast. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, said she and Jessica were going to grab breakfast and then hit the pool. I watched her leave, still unsure what I believed anymore. I dozed off again for a bit, slipping in and out of sleep, trying to shake this heavy feeling sitting in my chest. By the time I finally sat up, it was already close to lunchtime. I figured maybe I just needed to get out, eat something, see Emily, and maybe everything would start to feel normal again. I got dressed, splashed some cold water on my face and stepped out into the hallway. The ship had that mid-morning buzz, families laughing, kids running around, people clinking glasses and chatting. For a moment, it felt almost comforting. But then I passed a row of cabins and something made me stop. Laughter. Bright, carefree, familiar. It was coming from behind one of the cabin doors. I didn't think much of it at first, just another couple enjoying their vacation. But just as I was about to keep walking, I froze. The laugh. That specific laugh. I knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. That soft, musical giggle. It was Emily's. No doubt in my mind. My body went still. My heart kicked up a notch. Maybe she was just hanging out with Jessica and Tyler, I told myself. Maybe they decided to rest in someone's cabin for a bit. But the sound didn't match that explanation. It felt too intimate. I stood there for a long moment, caught between turning away and knocking. Eventually, curiosity, or fear, got the better of me. I knocked. I already had the apology in my head ready to go. Sorry, thought I heard someone I knew. Something light, something that wouldn't make me look crazy. But then the door opened. And it wasn't Tyler. It wasn't Jessica. It wasn't anyone I knew. It was some guy I'd never seen before, barely dressed, just a pair of shorts hanging on his hips. His hair was wet like he'd just stepped out of the shower. He looked relaxed, maybe even amused, like I'd interrupted a good time. I swallowed hard. Oh, sorry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Thought I heard someone familiar. He gave me a polite smile like it was no big deal. And for a split second I thought that was it. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was all in my head. But then I heard it. Her voice. From somewhere deeper inside the cabin, light and teasing, so casual it made my stomach drop. Darling, have you been waiting long? And there it was. No mistaking it. Emily. It felt like I'd taken a punch straight to the chest. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at the guy in the doorway. And I saw it, that slow change in his expression as realization dawned. He was piecing it together, figuring out who I was, why I was standing there. My mind was screaming that this couldn't be happening, that maybe I was misreading everything, but I couldn't deny what I'd just heard. Before I could even think, my body acted. I pushed past him, shoulder to chest, and stormed into the cabin. I didn't care about the scene. Didn't care if I looked crazy. I had to see it for myself. I had to know. And there she was. Emily. Lying on the bed, stretched out like she didn't have a care in the world. She was wearing that old pinup style bikini, the one I always thought looked cute on her, but now it just felt like some twisted costume. Her face flushed, her body still, and her eyes wide as they locked with mine. Caught. Time slowed down. My whole world tilted on its axis. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The guy behind me said something. I think he was trying to defuse the moment, maybe offer some weak excuse, but his voice barely registered. I couldn't take my eyes off Emily, the woman I'd built a life with. 7 years of memories, of trust, of love, and there she was lounging in another man's bed like it meant nothing. And the worst part? She didn't even try to cover up. She just looked at me. Stunned, yes, but there wasn't a hint of panic or shame. Maybe guilt. Or maybe irritation. Like I was the one interrupting. My hands were shaking. My stomach turned, and for a second I thought I might throw up. My chest felt like it was going to crack open. "Emily," I said, my voice so weak it barely made it out. What is this?" She didn't answer right away. The silence in that room was unbearable. It felt like the walls were closing in. Then finally she sat up a little and said in this calm, almost rehearsed tone, "Ryan, it's not what it looks like. Let me explain." But I couldn't hear any of it. I didn't want to. I wasn't interested in whatever story she was about to spin. I'd already seen enough. I turned around, stumbled out of the room and just started walking. No destination, no plan, just trying to get away. Away from her. Away from that room. Away from what I'd just seen. The rest of that day was a blur. I wandered the ship, numb, heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. We still had 5 more days on that ferry. 5 more days of pretending to coexist. The idea of going back to our cabin and sleeping beside her felt impossible. So I made a decision. I went back, pulled her suitcase from the closet and started packing her things. I didn't even stop to consider what it would look like. I was beyond caring. If she wanted to be with that guy, she could go stay in his cabin. Let her have the room. Let her have the mess she made. Dragging her suitcase down the corridor, I felt like I was walking underwater. Everything muted, distorted. But I kept going, each step a little more certain than the last. When I got to the cabin door, the same one I'd stood outside earlier, I hesitated just for a second. Then I raised my fist and knocked. But it wasn't him who opened the door. A woman answered. Mid-20s maybe, bright eyes, soft smile, completely unaware of the storm I was carrying. She looked at me puzzled. "Hi, can I help you?" I blinked, caught off guard. I'm looking for the guy who was here earlier," I said. "Is this still the right cabin?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, this is the one. He's my husband. He stepped out for a bit. Did you need something?" Her husband? For a second I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. I took a breath, tried to find my voice. "This might sound crazy," I said, swallowing hard. "But a couple hours ago I walked into this cabin. And I found my wife here. With your husband." Her expression shifted in an instant. The smile vanished, replaced by confusion, then disbelief. "Wait, what?" I nodded. I didn't know how else to handle it. I packed up her stuff, figured if she's gonna do this she can stay here. But I had no idea. She was staring at the suitcase now, her mind racing. "You're saying you caught your wife? In here? With my husband?" "Yes." For a moment she didn't say anything. She just stood there, blinking, her mouth slightly open like the words wouldn't come. "That can't be," she whispered, shaking her head. "No. That doesn't make sense. My husband wouldn't." But even as she spoke, the doubt crept in. I saw it in her eyes. She looked down at the suitcase again, then back at me, and something in her expression cracked. A part of her already knew. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "But I don't know how else to say it. I saw them. With my own eyes. And I can't." I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I can't even look at her right now." The young woman's hands were trembling as she stepped back, giving me room to place the suitcase just inside the doorway. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but no words came. I didn't have anything left to offer either. So I just nodded once and walked away, feeling her eyes burning into my back the whole way down the hall. Each step back to my cabin felt heavier than the last. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of how the last few hours had turned my entire life upside down. Just that morning, I had been looking forward to a week of peace and reconnection. Now I was trying to survive the fallout of a betrayal I never saw coming. When I closed the cabin door behind me, it all started to settle in. Not only had I just discovered Emily with another man, but I'd also dragged some poor stranger into the wreckage of it all. Another person who now had to pick up the shattered pieces of her own marriage just like I was doing. I didn't know what Emily would say when she realized I'd left her things at his cabin, and to be honest, I didn't care. At that point, all I wanted was space. To breathe. To think. I sank down on the edge of the bed, my body aching with exhaustion, but my chest still tight with anger and confusion. 5 more days on this ship. 5 more days trying to navigate the emotional wreckage of something I hadn't even had time to process. I sat there, staring at the door, knowing she'd come back. And when she did, I wasn't sure what I'd say. I didn't even feel like myself anymore, just a hollow version held together by rage and heartbreak. Sure enough, it didn't take long. The door opened and there she was, Emily. Her expression was carefully composed, like she'd been practicing whatever explanation she thought would make this all better. But the moment her eyes met mine, her confidence cracked just a little. Before she could speak, I cut her off. "You're not staying here," I said, my voice flat and cold. Your stuff's with him now. I dropped it off. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, you took my things? To his cabin? Yes, I said plainly. I'm not sleeping next to you. I don't want to be around you. You can stay with him. Or go sleep outside. I don't care anymore. She looked stunned. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Ryan, come on, you didn't have to do that. We can at least talk. No, I said louder this time. I've heard enough. I saw enough. And I'm done. Just leave. She stood frozen for a moment, searching my face, maybe looking for some trace of softness, some opening to crawl through. But she found none. I meant every word. Without another word, she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a beat, then moved to the door, cracking it open just enough to hear what would happen next. I didn't want to see her, I really didn't, but I couldn't help myself. I had to know. I heard her knock on the door of his cabin. There was a pause. And then, not his voice but hers, the other woman. What are you doing here? She snapped, voice sharp and full of fury. I just need to get my stuff, Emily said, quiet and shaky. Then came the sound I somehow knew was coming, the unmistakable slap, loud and sharp. Even expecting it, I still flinched. I peeked through the crack just in time to see the woman standing there, her face red with anger, staring Emily down. You lying, disgusting tramp, she said, voice trembling. How dare you come here after what you did? Emily didn't answer. She just stood there, one hand slowly rising to her cheek, eyes wide. The woman didn't wait. She pushed past Emily, storming into the hallway, and there he was, standing a few feet away, looking like he'd just walked into a nightmare. She marched right up to him, finger pointed in his face, her voice rising. Get out. You're done. Don't you ever come near me again. He started to speak, hands raised in some half-hearted defense, but she didn't let him finish. She shoved him hard against the wall. I said get out, she shouted, her voice echoing through the corridor. I don't care where you go. Just get away from me. People had started to peek out of their rooms now, drawn by the noise. But I didn't care. I kept watching, every word carving a little deeper into the truth of what had happened. The moment was brutal but honest, and somehow watching it unfold didn't bring me peace. Just a kind of empty confirmation. Emily stood off to the side, silent, stunned, with nowhere left to run. And me? I closed the door. Whatever came next, I didn't want to see it. I watched from the narrow crack in the door as he gathered a few of his things, head hanging low, mumbling something I couldn't make out. Emily didn't move. She just stood there in the hallway, pale, still, unsure what to do with herself. Then the woman pushed back into the cabin, slamming the door shut behind her, leaving them both standing outside with nowhere to go. For a moment there was silence. The guy turned to Emily, almost like he was hoping she'd say something to soften the blow, maybe reassure him. But she just shook her head, slowly, like the weight of it all had finally settled on her shoulders. They were stranded now, two people who'd made a mess and had no place to hide from it. I quietly closed my door and leaned against it, feeling something I hadn't expected. Relief. It was ugly and bitter, but it was there, a dark satisfaction in knowing they were the ones without a bed tonight. For once, I wasn't the fool left empty-handed. For once, it wasn't me pacing around with no place to go. They had to sit in the wreckage they created. I crawled back into bed, pulled the covers up to my chin and closed my eyes. I didn't know what the next day would bring, but that night I let myself rest. I let myself be alone. And that, somehow, felt like the only peace I'd had in days. The rest of the trip passed like a fogged-out dream. I kept to the cabin, skipped the meals, avoided the pool, the lounges, anywhere I might cross paths with her or him. I had no idea where they were sleeping and I didn't care. Every hour was just another step closer to the end. My only solace was the quiet, the stillness of that small room that no longer had to be shared. And then finally the ship pulled into port. As soon as we docked, I grabbed my bag and didn't look back. I didn't wait for Emily, didn't care if she was behind me or 10 miles away. I stepped off that ferry with no intention of ever speaking to her again. That ship didn't just carry us across the water, it carried the last traces of our life together, and I left them there to sink. Back on land, things moved quickly. In the days that followed, Emily started reaching out. Texts, voicemails, her voice soft and trembling, filled with apologies, explanations, pleas for just one more conversation. But I didn't answer. I didn't even read half the messages. There was nothing left to talk about. I filed for divorce within a week. She didn't fight it. Maybe she knew it was over. Or maybe she was too tired to pretend anymore. Whatever the reason, the end came without fireworks. Just paperwork, signatures, and a quiet goodbye to a life that was never quite what I thought it was. Going through the divorce was strange. Cold. Mechanical. One meeting after another, splitting up furniture, closing bank accounts, sorting through the wreckage of a marriage like it was just business. In a way, it was two people dividing up what was left after the damage had been done. But even in that, there was something final. Something clean. Closure, I guess. As for the other couple, I never saw them again. Not on the ship, not on the dock. They vanished, and honestly, I hope they never crossed my path. I don't know if she followed through and left him, if they fell apart the moment they got home. I thought about it once or twice, but the truth is, it didn't matter. Their story wasn't mine to carry anymore. When the divorce was finalized, I packed up and moved out of the apartment Emily and I had shared. I found a new place, smaller, quieter. Somewhere I could finally exhale. Somewhere I didn't have to look at the shadows of what used to be. It's been a few months now. Some days feel okay. Others still hit hard. I still catch myself thinking about that trip. The moment I opened that door, the sound of her voice from inside the cabin, the look on her face when she realized I knew. It's not something you just forget. But it's starting to fade. Bit by bit, the sharpness of it dulls, and I'm learning to let it go. I don't know what the future holds. But I know I'm not the same man who boarded that ferry. That man believed love was enough to hold anything together. That trust meant certainty. That loyalty guaranteed loyalty in return. He was hopeful. He was wrong. And that's okay. Because now I get to start over, not as the man who was betrayed but as the man who survived it. And for now that's enough.